Let me teach you something most people learn too late. Silence is not weakness. It is discipline. It is emotional control. It is self-respect in action. Weak people react immediately. They text back instantly. They defend themselves. They explain. They beg to be understood. But strong people, they pause. They observe. They let silence do the heavy lifting. When you stay silent after a breakup, you shift the energy. Instead of chasing for closure, you give them space to confront their own thoughts. And trust me, when you remove your voice from someone's life, your absence becomes louder than any argument ever could. Silence creates curiosity. Curiosity creates overthinking, and overthinking creates regret. They start asking themselves questions you don't have to ask for them. Why aren't they reaching out? Did they move on already? Do they not care anymore? The human mind hates uncertainty. When you stop giving reassurance, stop giving updates, stop giving emotional access, you introduce uncertainty. And uncertainty makes them replay everything, every conversation, every mistake, every moment they took you for granted. Here's the truth. When you argue, you relieve their guilt. When you stay silent, you magnify it. Your silence forces reflection. It forces accountability. It forces them to sit with the consequences of their choices, and that's powerful. Silence also protects you. Instead of reacting from pain, you respond with dignity. Instead of trying to prove your worth, you simply embody it. You show them that you don't need to scream to be heard. Remember this: the loudest statement you can make after being hurt is composure. Because when you don't chase, don't explain, don't react, you communicate one thing very clearly: I know my value, and I refuse to beg for it. And that realization, that's where their regret begins. Let's talk about power dynamics. Every relationship has emotional leverage. The person who reacts more usually cares more, and the person who cares less appears more powerful. Now listen carefully. I'm not telling you to stop caring. I'm telling you to stop showing emotional reactivity. The moment you respond to every breadcrumb text, the moment you argue back, the moment you post something just to make them jealous, you're giving them confirmation that they still have influence over you. But when you don't react, the power shifts. They expected tears, they expected anger, they expected long emotional paragraphs. Instead, they get silence, and that silence is confusing because control relies on predictability. If they know exactly how you'll respond, they feel safe. They feel dominant. They feel in control of the emotional narrative. But when you detach calmly, confidently, they lose that predictability. Suddenly, they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know if you've moved on. They don't know if they still matter. That uncertainty unsettles them. Nothing bruises the ego more than realizing you can't control someone's emotions anymore. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding their validation. And when validation disappears, so does their sense of superiority. They start questioning themselves. Why aren't they fighting for me? Did I underestimate them? Did I just lose someone who won't come back? And here's the psychological twist. When someone feels they're losing control, they instinctively want it back. That's when they start reaching out. That's when regret creeps in, because now it's not about love anymore. It's about ego, and ego hates losing access. When you master emotional restraint, you don't just protect your peace, you reclaim your power. Let me make something very clear. Growth in silence is the most intimidating thing you can do. Anyone can post motivational quotes. Anyone can announce they're doing better, but very few people actually elevate without making noise about it. When you focus on your mental clarity, your physical health, your financial independence, quietly, something shifts. You stop trying to prove, you start improving, and improvement is visible. You look different, you carry yourself differently. You respond differently. That confidence, it's magnetic. Your ex may not admit it, but they notice. They see the glow, they see the stability, they see the peace they once had access to, and no longer do. And here's what really triggers regret. They expected you to break. They expected you to struggle. They expected you to need them. But instead, you evolved. There is nothing more shocking to someone who left you than seeing you thrive without them. Because now they're forced to confront a painful possibility. Maybe I wasn't the prize, maybe they were. That thought hits hard. When you level up silently, you remove the narrative that they were your source of happiness. You prove, without saying a word, that your value was never dependent on their presence. And once they realize you're happier, stronger, and more grounded without them, regret doesn't whisper anymore. It echoes. Growth isn't revenge. It's transformation. And transformation in silence is unforgettable. Here's a hard truth. Constant availability lowers perceived value. When someone knows they can call you anytime, text you anytime, come back anytime, they subconsciously devalue your presence. Not because you lack worth, but because you lack scarcity. Think about it, rare things are treasured. Limited access increases desire. Human psychology is wired that way. When you were always there, they felt secure. Too secure, they assumed you'd always tolerate, always forgive, always stay. But the moment you withdraw access, everything changes. Now your absence feels noticeable. Now your silence feels heavy. Now your energy feels missed. Scarcity activates appreciation. When they can't reach you easily, when they can't predict you, when they can't replace your presence with someone who feels the same, that's when comparison begins. They may date someone new, they may distract themselves, but energy doesn't duplicate easily. And when they realize that what you offered, loyalty, emotional depth, genuine connection, isn't common, regret intensifies, because now they understand something they didn't before. You weren't ordinary. You were rare, and rare things aren't easily replaced. When you stop being available, you stop being an option. When you stop being an option, you become a memory. And when you become a memory, they can't recreate. Regret doesn't just grow. It stays.